Hey everybody, welcome back. Good morning. Hopefully this is just going to be a quick video, a little bit of a warning and public service announcement. If you've been following my videos, and you may run into this situation that I ran into where uh, benchmarking the 7800X3D against the 5800X3D, getting the 7800X3D and the AM5 platform running on Linux. I initially installed Ubuntu 23.04 in order to get one of the latest kernels. The kernel on 23.04 is 6.2, and then for the previous videos where it was the 5800X3D platform had Ubuntu 22.04 is kernel 5.19. So I installed 23.04, but I wasn't very happy with that release, and I experienced a little bit of instability as well as some of the layouts and personal preferences I didn't like. And then one of the major bugs is the SDL2 version for Ubuntu 23.04 breaks the Logitech Extreme 3D controller. It turns it into a gamepad, and so nothing I did was allowing me to get the joystick to be recognized as a joystick in Star Citizen and other games. So I decided to downgrade the 7800X3D AM5 platform to Ubuntu 22.04. And when I did so, everything seemed to be running just fine, with the exception of being able to monitor the temperatures for several of the key component items on the motherboard specifically, because kernel 5.19 on Ubuntu 22.04 doesn't know how to really communicate with the AM5 platform. So I was missing all of these sensors here. Of course, I still had the 6900 XT's sensors because the open source driver on 5.19 in the kernel certainly can communicate just fine, no problems with the 6900 XT graphics card. But I was also missing the temperature of the die, which is CCD1 here, and then temperature of the CPU here. And then CPU usage and free memory, was non-existent when you brought up P sensor, or you even typed in LM sensors. And again, that's just because it's an older kernel and it doesn't have the ability and the drivers to speak to the motherboard. So, but everything still seemed like it was running just fine, and I was doing the initial benchmark testing in that particular case. And the problem is very quickly, I would say within a couple of minutes, the frame rates looked great. They looked like, they should. However, I started smelling a really hot electrical component smell here in the office. And so I immediately shut it down, and I had remembered and recognized this from 13 years ago, I believe, when I was really first starting to play with Linux installs and learn all about it. I had done it on a laptop where instead of going backwards a kernel, I had gone forward a kernel. And in doing so, I smelled the exact same hot component smell and immediately shut it down and then reverted the kernel back, and everything was fine. And that laptop actually still works to this day and has no issues or no problems. So I immediately shut down the benchmark and started researching it to make sure that I wasn't going to blow up any components on the motherboard or the CPU. So basically, what I wanted to do though was still keep 22.04, but yet bring the kernel up in line to at least 6.2. And so real easy way to do that is, it's installed Ubuntu 22.04. I wouldn't put any load on the system if you're doing it this way on an AM5 platform. And immediately what I would do is, maybe do a sudo apt update and sudo apt upgrade and make sure that your system is up to date in that sense. Now, that still won't fix the problem. You're still going to have to install a kernel that is actually going to speak well with the AM5 platform. So what you would do here then is this sudo apt add apt repository and caplican and then /ppa space -y, and I'll put these in the description below. And what that does is that's going to give you the ability to install the mainline kernel installer. And so then after you add that repository and update, then you can do the sudo apt install mainline-y. And what that's going to do then is that's going to give you the mainline installer, which then you can pick and choose which kernel that you want to use. So again, Ubuntu comes with 5.19 installed, and as you can see, after the update, it updated to 5.19.0.42.43. So what I did is I went ahead and selected 6.2.16, and you click on install. It installs the kernel, reboot, and you should be good to go. If you do this and secure boot is enabled on your system, then you may see an error when booting into the Ubuntu drive of something about SIM signature not valid, and the kernel must be loaded first. Some kind of error. That means that secure boot is still enabled on your system, and installing a new kernel that isn't signed for Ubuntu 22.04 is what's going to cause that problem. So if you disable secure boot, that's up to you. Again, you can get around this all by just installing Ubuntu 23.04, and maybe that install worked for you. But for me personally, I much rather stay on the long term here, even though I have done a kernel change. But installed the 6.2.16 and rebooted, disabled the secure boot, rebooted, and everything popped up as normal for the temperature sensors. And so I'm able to much better monitor the temperatures of the components on the board, including the chipset, which I believe is going to be the Edge. I'm not sure about that. But more importantly, though, is after doing the benchmarking, the hot component smell has disappeared and it is back to normal. So if you are following my videos and you are installing 22.04 on a drive for dual boot on an AM5 platform, just be advised, I don't want you to blow up and burn up a computer component on your system. And so this is just going to be a quick little video putting out that warning and that public service announcement here to update your kernel to something that your AM5 can communicate with the kernel with. So that's it for today for this video. But later on today, or hopefully tomorrow morning, if not today, I will be putting out the video of the 5800X3D versus the 7800X3D in both Windows and in Linux, and at 1080p and 1440p resolution. So stay tuned for that, and it should be out shortly, and we'll see you next time.